Uh, Good morning, everyone. My name is Joshua Kim. I am the Program Director of Product Management for IBM Concert. And today I have the pleasure of speaking to you guys about application resilience, right? And creating resilient applications is always a big challenge, right? Especially with the resources consistently constrained, right? Where every enterprise today is asked to do more with less. And therefore, it's becoming essential to automate aspects of your operational application lifecycle. Okay, so let's jump right into it. um, Resilience, though, starts actually with the data. And if we look at how enterprises do resilience today, typically we are having, either hiring consultants or having a ton of different meetings with different focals to get an understanding of how to make a resilient application. And that's a very, very cumbersome process, right? Think of the war rooms that you might have. Think of the lack of information you might have because that information sits in a different tool somewhere in a different team. For example, networking data that you might need might sit with the networking team. Application performance data might sit with the SRE team, right? So the reality today is most enterprises have a very disjointed ecosystem of hundreds of tools that they use to monitor their application lifecycle. And in order to be able to ensure resilience, right, you really need to be able to bring all of this data together, right? So rather than have a manual correlation of data, so various teams submit various pieces of data, someone sitting there that's going to put it together, generate an understanding of it, and then understand what actions to take. The future step, or the way forward, is really to be able to automate that and get understanding from that using AI. Now, when we look at that kind of statement, a lot of enterprises might get a little bit reprehensive, right? The traditional AI ops tools that we used to do that kind of help with this, I'm going to actually say that by and large failed. Either they struggled with having access to data, or they were very hyper focused on a very singular narrow domain of automation. What we're doing here is actually a little bit different, okay? And with Concert, Concert actually acts as a connective tissue. Okay? And Concert's a brand new product that we launched in June of last year. And we actually designed this to be used internally initially. And we are using this internally in production across various software development teams. And Concert is actually very, very special because we started with the data, okay? Meaning the first thing Concert does is it provides the ability to correlate data from disparate sources and be able to have a cohesive understanding of it. Okay. We then take that understanding and we're able to provide actionable insights. Okay. So recommendations on what you need to do. And essentially that's going to help power the AI to be able to take automated actions. Okay. Now let's take a look at that a little bit deeper. Okay. So Concert works in 4 broad steps. Okay. The first step is the discovery phase. And like I mentioned before, we have a lot of capabilities to bring data from disparate sources together. What does that mean? It means that we can connect to your observability tools. Think your Instanas, think your Dynatrace, think your Datadog. We can connect to your networking tools. Think Sev1 or other network monitoring tools. We can connect to your security tools, your DevOps tools, your operational approval tools like ServiceNow. And we bring together all that data and we generate an understanding of it. Okay. And that understanding is actually very, very unique. It's a application-centric understanding. What does that mean? It means that when we pull in data from, for example, your observability or networking tools, typically those are either centric on hardware or centric on performance or different aspects, right? But we create an application-centric understanding of that data and generate what we call a application 360 view. And that's essentially the correlated data and insights of that application, from your performance data, your security data, your risk data, your networking data, all mapped together into a single cohesive understanding. Okay. And with that understanding, we're now able to apply AI to it to provide recommendations. And because we have that understanding, we're able to do things like advanced prioritization. We understand the risks and impacts of certain issues, and we're able to highlight priority because we understand the full picture of that application. Further, we've trained this AI in very specific domain knowledge, for example, networking or security. And our AI is able to make recommendations in real time to help you focus where it matters most, but also recommendations on how to remediate issues. Okay. So you don't have to go do a Google search or ask your different specialist teams. Concert will actually make a recommendation to you on how to remediate issues. But that's not all. The last step Concert takes, and this is really where the automation comes in, is Concert's able to generate AI workflows. Okay, and a workflow is a little bit different than your traditional automation, like on Ansible or Terraform. Workflows is a really end-to-end automation. It's a multi-step automation process whereby we're able to automate the operational aspect as well as the technical aspect. So as an example, we can remediate a vulnerability, for example, kick off a ticket to ServiceNow, get an approval. Concert can generate a full code on how to remediate that vulnerability, kick it off to something like Ansible to execute it. And that's what I mean by a workflow. It's a full business automated process. Okay. So these 4 steps are what Concert does for a variety of different use cases: the collection of data, the generation of an application understanding, the application of AI to understand that data and make recommendations, and last but not least, be able to automate and take actions. Sean, I think there was a couple of questions.
Yes, there were a couple of questions, Joshua. And again, Sean Almeida here, your host for this TBM track. Joshua, some of the questions we get in the field, I know you and I get these things, and maybe I'll answer it and then feel free to jump in. I like the example of resilience and how you walk through this. So maybe we can take resilience as an example, right? If you, like the question was, how is Concert different from CP for AI ops, right? If you take resilience as an example, like Joshua said, companies look at resilience. Resilience can mean 10 different things to somebody within the organization. It could mean application resilience. It could mean infrastructure resilience. It could mean security resilience, observability resilience, maintenance resilience. When you look at it in all these different dimensions, CP for AI ops is more focused, I would say, on the DevOps aspects of it. Concert would stretch it not only to DevSecOps, it's also taking it beyond into compliance, into risk management, into governance. So it's looking at it from all these, and I think this is where, Joshua, you use the term App 360, right? It's giving you that whole 360 view of how we look at the world. And now, while CP for AI ops is very narrow in its vision, I think Concert is more broader in its vision. Also, I know you have machine learning and AI models within AI ops that you can find the issue and you can solve it. But Concert is taking it to the next level, right? It's using Gen AI, it's using like no code, low code environments like workflows. So think of it as AI ops plus is Concert. I would say that's one simple answer. Then the next question, Joshua, anything on that? Anything you want to add on that I missed?
And it's what I kind of mentioned earlier, right? Most AI ops tools, I think, have become very focused or limited, right? And that's just the nature of how they were developed, right? We actually created Cloud Pak for AI ops, initially focused on incident management, and that's kind of where it stayed. With Concert, we did things a little bit differently, and we did this by learning from our experiences, right? And like I mentioned before, one of the first things we did with Concert was start with that data, right? One of the reasons a lot of these AI ops tools, I think, have challenges or are really very limited domains is because the breadth of what they can see or understand, right, is very limited because of the access to data that they or the limited access to data that they have, right? With Concert, I can feed it, data from over 300 different sources. We can generate an understanding of it and then be able to act on it, right? So with Concert, we're trying to really make it a more generic operational automation, right? With AI ops, I'm going to say, this isn't just for Cloud Pak for AI ops, it's most AI ops tools. They're very, very focused in a certain area, right? And keep in mind, only IBM can really pull this off because we have different technologies at each and every step, right?
Yeah.
We have technologies and different tools that bring data together. There's a lot of tools that do that, but IBM has a lot of tech in that. We have the tech, we have our own AI, right? Very big advantages for us. And if you guys don't know this, right, every release of Concert, which is about monthly, we train the model or we improve the model on over 10,000 new prompts and domain knowledge every single release. And we do that because we use our Granite model under the covers, and IBM owns the Granite model, right? So that accuracy of responses and how we do are also, I think, a big differentiator.
Yeah. And moving on to the second question, right? I think the question, and I know Joshua will go into this in one of his use cases, is CVE scanning, is that needed when we are integrating Concert with some of the other tools like Instana or things like that? And I think scanners there's plenty of scanners in the market. And I think scanning is not the problem. It's after you get the scan data, how are you prioritizing? How are you solving that? How are you improving the experience? How are you managing that whole CVEs? I think that's the challenge, managing and prioritizing and knowing where to focus, knowing which ones are important. That's where a lot of clients spend a lot of their time and get tripped up. And Joshua will also go into that use case, right? Similar to how we went through resilience, he will go into some of those in those use cases. So Joshua, you can go ahead with your.
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about those 4 steps in a little bit more depth, okay? So that you have a basis of understanding, and then we'll get into the use cases that Concert actually does, okay? And keep in mind, these 4 steps are done no matter what use case Concert does, right? So discover, understand, recommend, act. We do it for those 4 steps apply to everything that Concert does. So keep that in mind as we kind of go through this, okay? So in the discover phase, one of the ways that Concert brings data together is actually by using workflows. We have over 350 connectors to various data tools. And here's the important thing. We don't have to pull, like if we connect to something like Instana or Datadog, we don't pull the whole data set. We pull specific pieces of data that we need, right? And I can show you that if we have time at the end. But we're able to take this data and we generate that App 360 graph, right? What it is essentially a graph database under the covers that is used in parallel with a software bill of materials, so an SBOM. Okay, and SBOMs are quickly becoming the standard and legal standard for a lot of enterprises because there are government regulations now, both in the US and in Europe, about the need to use SBOMs, right? So we've actually trained our AI to understand the data model as well as be able to understand an SBOM, right? So those 2 things are used in conjunction to generate this application 360 view, okay? So what does that mean? It means that if we connect to Instana, we connect to something like NS1 or Sev1, right? We're able to correlate that data into an application or an application definition, and the application stems into all that data, right? So that's how we generate that understanding, okay?
Hey,
Okay.
Joshua, if you don't mind
Sure.
me jumping in, I know SBOM, a lot of people ask, what is an SBOM if they don't come from that world? Think in simple layman's terms, think of it as ingredients of a software build, right? So if you're building new software, and why that's becoming important is a lot of us use open source, a lot of us use a lot of different libraries out there. And that's becoming important because if there is corruption to the code or if there is some problem in the code, we want to know what ingredients really went into that. So then we can know where the impact is and then we can solve that. So it's about software management of the software supply chain. And that's why SBOMs are important. Go ahead, Joshua.
Thank you, Sean. Okay. Now, we take all that data and we're able to establish this application topology. And this is kind of our key differentiator, right? And why this is so important, I'm going to get into just a second, right? But let me describe what this actually is, right? So if you look at all the hundreds of tools in your enterprise today, right? Each has its own small domain of understanding, okay? And if you want to do something like resilience, or if you want to do something like vulnerability management, okay, what's needed, right? You need different pieces of information from different places to make decisions on what to do. So let's take the vulnerability example for just a second, right? Let's say you have a vulnerability. What do teams do today? They have war rooms. Your tool spit out 30,000 vulnerabilities. No enterprise is going to fix 30,000 vulnerabilities in one release. So what do? You prioritize. And you can only prioritize if you have an understanding of the different aspects of your application, your business, etc. Okay, that requires people, that requires teams, that requires data that sits in different places to come together to make that prioritization. And today, that is largely a manual process. Okay. Now, one might argue that, oh, the CVSS score gives me this prioritization. However, CVSS is not always a good indicator of prioritization. It's a very generic understanding of criticality, but some of those vulnerabilities might not be applicable to your business. Some of those vulnerabilities might not be a high because, for example, that specific library is behind a firewall somewhere or not on a exposed network port. Okay, so being able to get through all that prioritization and figure out what you need to fix, a lot of time is spent on that. Okay, so what does Concert do instead? Because we have this topology generated automatically from the data sources that we connect to, we're able to autonomously tell you what some of this impact is. We can tell you that this library affects this applications. These applications are running on this network ports, and therefore the exposed network port applications are a higher priority versus the unexposed network ports are a lower priority. Okay, so that's just a very simple example and I hope you get the idea of why bringing this data together is important, right? But this application topology is really the secret sauce of understanding for Concert. Okay, now the next step from that is the ability to take recommendations. And like I mentioned earlier, there's two specific things that we've done here. First is we've trained our models to be able to understand that data model as well as SBOMs. Okay, so that application topology coupled with the SBOM, and our AI is actually able to understand the intricate impacts between various different data sources. Okay, the second thing we've done is train this model to be with domain-specific knowledge, and that continues on with every release. But for example, we've trained this model on security data. We've trained this model on resilience or SRE data. We've trained this model on networking data. Okay, so it's able to actually tell you in real time where you have the most urgent issues, what the recommended actions are, what the priorities are, but also we're able to generate a full remediation workflow to remediate issues. Okay, and that's going to be our biggest differentiator, okay? Because a lot of tools will give you recommendations for a variety of things. A lot of tools will give you prioritizations, but only Concert can give you a full end-to-end remediation workflow to resolve those remediations, those issues, okay? And we use AI to do that, right? So this AI that we've created is able to take natural language recommendations and generate a full end-to-end workflow to remediate that issue. So for example, in the example on the screen, it says, I want Concert to write a workflow to create a complete network topology on IBM Cloud, create a VPC, a subnet, and an instance in that subnet. So again, those are multi-step processes, by the way, right? If you send that to any other kind of automation tool, it's not going to be able to actually generate that. But Concert's AI can take that input and generate a full workflow. And you can see an example of the workflow. This is actually a technology called Concert Workflows. And if you actually click on each of those, they'll open into the actual code to be able to pull that off, right? So we're moving away from automating just simple actions to being able to automate these complex workflow automation operations, right? Again, like I mentioned before, being able to even get approval before we kick off a workflow, okay? Now, these are, because most enterprises might be a little bit hesitant to adopt full automation, right? One of the mechanisms to actually implement, to execute these automations are what we call automation rules. So you're able to customize various rules and conditions on when certain things happen. There's always an approval before Concert does anything. If you don't want Concert to actually directly take action, but only generate the code for you, it can do so, okay? So those 4 steps is how Concert works in all the use cases that we're going to be discussing, okay?
Hey, Joshua, I think You touched on this, I think, but I think the audience are still trying to wrap their heads around Concert because it's a new concept. I think many of them are coming from the AI ops world.
Mhm.
And I think in typically AI ops, they look at MELT, right? Metrics, events, traces, logs. And I think we talked about it, right? So while that is also coming into Concert, there's a lot of other information too that we gather into Concert, like risks and compliance and certificates. So there's different dimensions. So I think when it comes to connecting the dots, we are connecting more dots. And I think then the correlation, right? We are looking at structured data, unstructured data, correlating all of that. Some AI ops tools do that, but I think where we break away really more is, like you said, the action, right? While some AI ops tools give you like some runbook automation, some this thing, like you said, it's not multi platform or it's not multi technology. Whereas this one with our workflows, you're able to do a more complex workflow that is really actionable, right? It connects different systems, different platforms. Like an example we can think of is like connecting Ansible with Terraform, with maybe Turbo or some other platform, because to get up and running, to get resilient, you're looking at observability resilience, you're looking at infrastructure resilience, you're looking at security resilience. So you have to fix all of that to say you're a 9 on resilience. So
Yeah, and I think that's a great question, Sean. Right, and going back to the AI ops, right? With Concert, the biggest difference that we actually did from traditional AI ops tools is those 4 steps, right? Those 4 steps are applicable no matter what use case we're doing, right? And we're about to get into those use cases, so I think that's a good segue, right? So Concert started with risk last year, right? That's the vulnerability, certificate management, compliance, software composition analysis, and we had that focus for last year. But in 1.04, which was launched just a few weeks ago, we introduced resilience. Okay, and come July, we're actually going to have another use case besides resilience, right? But one of the reasons we're able to introduce these use cases literally every 6 months is because that foundational technology of Concert, the ability to bring data together, the ability to generate understanding, the ability to apply AI for recommendations, and the ability to take actions, those 4 steps work no matter what use case you're doing, right? So I'm going to cover some of these in a little bit more depth just now, but this is kind of our full picture of Concert, right? The ability to apply AI starts with the data. Okay, so if you ask what Concert is an AI ops tool, right? At its fundamental core, but we're taking a very different approach, working with clients and their existing tools to realize AI and ultimately automation. Okay, so on the left we have the risk posture that we've talked about all last year, which includes things like vulnerability management, certificate management, application compliance, and software composition analysis. Okay. On the right side, we have resilience, which is brand new. And this is the ability to define resilience goals, collect metrics to align to those goals, and assess your applications on how resilient it is. For example, your tier 1 application might need 5 nines of uptime, whereas a tier 3 application, which might not be so business critical, might only need 3 or 4 nines, right? And we're able to monitor applications and actually assess them against those goals. Okay. On the bottom there, you see the variety of sources of data that we collect. I know that says 250, but I think we're right now at a little bit over 350. We're introducing about 16 new connectors every couple of weeks. And on top, you have the workflows, which is our Concert workflows engine, which is able to generate workflows to remediate a variety of issues. Okay, so let's dig into this picture just a little bit and break down some of these use cases.
Hey, Joshua, before you get into that, right? Like, I know like risk assessments and resilience assessments, I know you mentioned this before. Typically, those are $1 million or multi-million dollar assessments. And most times those assessments are static assessments. They're one point in time. And I think what we're doing with Concert is we're giving you the capability to continually assess and continually assess and optimize, right? Assess, act, optimize. And So, and I think that's the difference, right? And we just saw Google, I think, pay 32 billion for Wiz, and that shows like the risk use case is a really powerful use case that clients are looking at. We already have that in Concert. But if we are going much beyond Wiz with resilience and we are growing further and further, right? So this is actually a really powerful tool that the market is saying there is demand for.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Okay, let's get into some of these use cases one by one. Okay, so application resilience. Okay, what is it? And as Sean mentioned, one of the reasons that we did this is because enterprises spend millions and millions of dollars. Okay, hiring consulting firms, the man hours spent just to look at man hours spent by your teams to look at all this data, that those specialists you have to hire who kind of need this knowledge, right? And the reality today is most applications aren't resilient. We might claim they are, but in a cloud native world, to be honest, cloud's not designed to be resilient, right? And we've moved away from like the resiliency of, for example, mainframes, which were designed to be resilient. And in a cloud native world, it's really on the users and the individual enterprises to make their application resilient. Okay, you can't just deploy it on mainframe and then expect the mainframe box to take care of everything, right? On cloud, it's really up to you. And therefore, we've got into this practice of hiring consultants. We have very large SRE teams that will look at applications, and they'll only be able to see pieces of it, right? But Concert's trying to really automate this, and the way we're automating this is by being able to create a holistic view of your application resilience by pulling in different data from different sources together and assess against a posture that you establish. Okay, so for example, in the example I mentioned before, a tier 1 app might need 5 nines of availability. It might have to recover in under an hour, right? It can only be down for, let's say 10 seconds, right? It has a maintenance window of 2 hours, right? Versus a tier 3 app, which might have much more lax rules, right? Where the recoverability or the downtime might be acceptable, might be a day. Mean time to recovery might be a week, right? And it might only have 3 nines of uptime, right? So you're able to establish these goals these goals of what you want a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 application to be. Okay, and Concert's able to connect to various data sources. For example, we get MTTR, MTTM data, recovery rates from observability tools like Instana or Datadog. We can get the usability or maintainability data from things like ServiceNow. And we correlate all that data together and give you a proactive assessment, okay? And we're able to track where your application scores against those goals, okay? And today, we're able to monitor across 90 different metrics, okay? And this is designed to work seamlessly within your stack. It's not designed to replace any of the tools you have. So it'll work over ServiceNow, will work over your existing observability tools, will work over your existing networking tools. And Concert's able to bring that data together and give you an assessment on how much you're meeting your established assessment or resilience target. Okay, but that's not all. We're able to also make recommendations on how to close those gaps. Okay, and these recommendations are based on IBM Consulting and SRE best practices, which we've trained our model on to be able to generate those recommendations, right? So for example, if you have a gap in recoverability, Concert will look at your ecosystem and actually tell you, hey, like this is what you need to do to recover, okay, or improve recoverability, okay? So we're trying to automate a process where you're hiring consultants who spend years literally looking at applications and telling you what you need to do, okay? Last but not least, once we have the recommendation from Concert and we know what that issue is, Concert, again, can generate that workflow to resolve that issue, right? And that might be something as simple as moving a container from one side to a different, more stable hardware platform, but Concert can do all of that over time, okay? Last but not least, we're able to track these changes over time. So these assessments, by the way, could be run continuously, could be run every hour, could be run once a day. It's really up to the user. And we're able to track changes over time and uncover trends about the resilience of the application. And that's going to be important in things like forecasting for cost. We're going to start getting into the predictiveness, right? So Concert being able to predict whether an issue is going to occur. So we don't have that quite yet, but that's where we want to land, okay? And ultimately, we really want to be proactive about this, okay? So before we take the question, let's look at a quick demo, okay, of what this sort of looks like, okay? And let's get right into it. Okay, so this is a live environment of Concert, and you can see, we can establish various postures. There's posture trends on certain applications. And if we move forward, this is the actual, the posture analysis. And you can see here we have a couple of scores, dimensions, right? Availability, scalability, observability, recoverability, maintainability, and usability. And we have established scores or expected scores, which is in the yellow, as well as where we are scoring today, which is in the purple/red. So Concert actually tells you where some of your risks are. So we can see that we have critical risk in scalability, where the expected score is 100, but our assessed score is 20. You can see the actions there, where we're recommending certain actions to take to be able to remediate or take that assessed score from 20 to 100. And again, this is always active. You can set the assessment frequency up above. We tell you an overall score about the application as well. This is our kind of demo, and we only showed I think 6 NFRs. But keep in mind we have over 90 different metrics now as of a couple of weeks ago. Okay, so what does that mean actually, and why is this going to be very important? Okay, so just to recap, resilience today is very manual and fragmented. A ton of different tools. You're hiring consultants. Very time consuming to get at this data and be able to get that understanding. A lot of the decisions on resilience is also gut-based because you don't have complete data. We're relying on intuition. We're relying on just, hey, I have this experience, therefore I know, right? And it's actually lacking a lot of the data-driven consistency, right? Resilience today is very costly. A lot of the SREs who really understand this stuff are probably your most expensive resources, right? And you're not going to have 100 of them. You might have 1 or 2, and those 1 or 2 are now asked to do more, and more. So this is not about reducing headcount, right? It's empowering those people to be able to do more with less, okay? And last but not least, that approach is very difficult to scale. So what we actually see is only a very small subset of applications at most enterprises will get any sort of resilience analysis, right? The rest is it's off to fend for themselves because there's just no time to be able to manage all of that, okay? Now, with Concert, we have a very standardized resilience framework, okay? Again, based on IBM Consulting and SRE best practices. It's repeatable, it is data-driven, okay? It is measurable, okay? We're able to collect and analyze data from multiple sources. We have an AI that's able to provide very clear and actionable insights, okay? This is proactive. As your application changes, right, Concert is able to tell you what changed, and your score can go up or score can go down. And last but not least, Concert is not intended to replace any of your existing tools. It's intended to work with your existing tools to improve your application resilience. Okay. So Sean, any questions?
No questions, but I was thinking also, Josh, as you are going through this, most companies treat resilience as an after fact. So after they do deployment, then they're looking at how do I now make the deployment more resilient. But what I'm thinking is Concert is now shifting more left. So you can actually build it resilient ready before you even deploy it. So you're actually putting it in the pipeline. So resilience is part of your build cycle versus an after fact.
No, that's a great point, Sean. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so let's get into application risk. Okay. So the other big use case Concert does is application risk. Now, this includes things like vulnerabilities. This includes things like certificates. But a lot of people ask me, why is this differentiating and why is this important? Okay. So when we first started Concert, and we actually targeted vulnerabilities or risk first, one of the reasons we did that is because it's a very well understood and very structured operational process. Every enterprise does vulnerability management exactly the same, right? We have a scanner. That scanner will output, 30,000, 70,000, 100,000 vulnerabilities about an application or a group of applications. We have war rooms to look at that prioritization because the CVSS score is not enough, okay? And we figure out what we can contain and what we can't contain, okay? And that process typically takes, I'm going to say, about a week. And 30,000 vulnerabilities per week, usually a team of 10 or 15 looking at these manually, okay? By the way, that's not even fixing. This is just triaging vulnerabilities, okay? Again, every enterprise does that exactly the same. And we thought to ourselves, okay, what if we automate that, right? What if we reduce the time? And you can get from being able to solve or resolve 30,000 vulnerabilities a week to resolving 100,000 vulnerabilities a week. By the way, no company resolves 30,000 vulnerabilities a week. They're usually more in the range of a couple hundred to 1,000. Okay. So what does Concert do here? Concert actually, and you can see an example of the kind of application topology on the bottom there, right? But Concert's able to take inputs from a variety of security scanners. Think your Wiz, think your Aquasec. Okay, we're not there to replace those scanners, and Concert itself does those scans. Okay, we're able to pull these scans, okay, and generate or correlate them with our application data. Okay, meaning we understand which vulnerabilities affect which group of applications, where those applications are running. Right? Is that a public access point? Is that a private access point? Which libraries are affected, correlated with CVSS score. And we're able to give you a custom prioritization based on the understanding of your application environment and the impact to it, okay? So that's something that no one else really does. Everyone has prioritization, but we really prioritize very specifically catered or tailored to your environment. And that's not all. Once we have that prioritization, it's not only the users that have to go filter through it or fix them. Concert now has the ability to spit out workflows to actually resolve those vulnerabilities. That is something that no other tool has. Now, as an example, right, what might that mean? That might mean that if we detect a very specific vulnerability in a very specific package, we can spit out a full end-to-end workflow that will patch that application or that specific package or that specific VM to resolve the vulnerability. Okay. Again, very, very, very differentiating from what anyone else does. Okay.
Hey, Josh, on that, I know with the Wiz acquisition, everybody's talking about Wiz today. It's in the news. And I think you just hit it right on, right? We have these tools in-house and we still saw the gap, and the clients we talk to also use these tools. They still see the gaps that you see, right? And I think that's where we are going from, not only just looking at it from a security CVE standpoint, like everybody scans, everybody has this, but then marrying it with the CVSS score, looking at what really it means to you in your individual context, and then prioritizing that. I think that's where CISOs really see a lot of gaps, right? Because they have limited number of team members. They don't know what's the priority, which ones are external facing, which ones are internal facing. And I think, and then the action part of it, right? Like you said. So there's a huge value. So if your clients are talking about Wiz today, this is your opportunity to go and talk about Concert. Like same thing, if you're a customer using Wiz today, please bring us in and have us tie in Concert to your Wiz platform, because you will see, like you said, we are going beyond risk, we are going into resilience, we are going into a lot of other things that you as a customer care about.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Sean. And like I mentioned, right, our biggest kind of differentiator here, I think, is really going to be our AI, right? So you can see the recommendation that we are making here, right? And we do this for every vulnerability in Concert, okay? And here it says, upgrade the go-get version from 5.13 to something that, upgrade it to 5.13 or later, right? And that might seem like a simple recommendation, but sometimes, think of what it takes to even figure that out, right? The amount of skill it needs, the amount of Google searches or understanding, various security bulletins, right? That's now just automatically done in one place, right? And like I mentioned before, we can even kick off a workflow to remediate that vulnerability. Okay? So let's look at risk just for very quickly. Then we have 15 minutes. Then let's get into what the remediations actually look like. Okay. So this is Concert's application topology, right? You can see we have 5 applications. You can see the various scans. We have scans that are done on the SaaS scans that are done more on the dev side. We have the DAS scans, which are more the continuous scans, and that's going to be kind of your whizzes, right? So security scans are always done at different stages, right? And multiple times, by the way. And Concert's able to correlate all of that into a single consolidated view. And you can see when we click on, CVE 45337, we have the details of what that vulnerability is, as well as the recommended action to remediate that vulnerability. Okay. Now going back to the topology, you can actually see what this vulnerability affects, right? Which endpoints are affected by this vulnerability. This is affecting 3 applications, right? So this vulnerability is actually running on an environment that has both public and private access points, and therefore it is a critical vulnerability, right? So very, very easy to use, very, very intuitive, right? I hope you get the idea of how we're able to understand this prioritization and impacts. But now let's actually see what that remediation looks like, okay? So in December of last year, we embedded a new technology that we're calling Concert Workflows. And Concert Workflows is really the ability, it actually started out as a no-code, low-code workflow generator. And this is the ability to drag and drop components like, connect here, go do this, restart the service. So like those are 4 action blocks that we can connect into a complete workflow, okay? And this used to be kind of drag and drop. But what we introduced in tech preview at the same time in December was the new AI, or Concert's AI, that's able to take natural language input and output a full complete workflow set. Okay. Now that works beautifully with Concert because Concert's recommendations today are in natural language. So for example, if we take that snippet, this recommendation here, upgrade from version, upgrade to 5.13, we can take that and actually generate a workflow to do that, right? Now we can add in specific prompts like, hey, connect to ServiceNow and get an approval first, alert someone in Slack, and then go kick off that workflow to upgrade that package, right? Or patch that package, right? But that's the kind of power that we're now going to be able to get into, okay? And by the way, these workflows are available standalone. What does that mean? It means that you don't need all of Concert. We can connect these workflows directly to existing tools like Wiz, so that we provide actions for Wiz. We can connect this directly to tools like Dynatrace or Datadog, so we're providing actions to observability tools, okay? And it's a very, very customizable and very, very powerful tool that we're bringing to market here, okay? Now, let's see that in a little bit more, a little bit of action right now, okay? Whoops. And so in Concert, you'll have a new tab called Workflows, and when you click it, you can see right now it's drag and drop, right? So you're dragging different components. Like here's an action block that says Get Certificate. There's an action block that says Upload Certificate, right? And then we're assigning certificate details. So these are the different action blocks you can assign. There's over 300 something connectors, right? And you can customize these action blocks. There's templated action blocks, or there's literally thousands of templated action blocks. So there's certain preset actions that you want. They're templated, and here you can run it directly from inside Concert as well. Okay. So this is the drag and drop, and as I mentioned earlier, we have the AI now that's able to actually generate all of that for you. Okay. All right. Any questions on the workflows?
I think, Joshua, some of the questions could be can you just get the workflows alone, or do you have to buy the whole Concert? I'm sure some of them are thinking.
Yeah, so Workflows is available as a standalone install, but it is still the Concert license. So if you buy Concert, you have the option to install the full package, or if you just want Workflows by itself, you can do that as well. But it is a single license, a single part number.
Thank you, Joshua.
All right, I hope everyone's excited about this, by the way. Like, this is going to be our key differentiator as we move forward, right? And this really brings the actions to Concert, okay? All right, last but not least, we have the mainframe use case, okay? This is a new use case that we haven't GA'd yet, but we're planning to introduce. But this is an example of what we're planning in the July timeframe, eventually we're calling kind of operational automation, right? And operational automation is very, very simple, right? Today, maintaining various aspects of your IT infrastructure is actually very cumbersome and manual, okay? In Z specifically, for example, knowing which APARs, and you can think, if you don't know Z, APARs are essentially fixed packs, right? Which fixed packs get applied where, to which applications and which LPARs, there's actually no tool that really does this for you, okay? And this is in by and large, a manual process, okay? So what Concert does here is we're able to actually automate the management of these fixed packs, whereby we tell you which LPARs, and think of LPARs as, I guess the biggest analogy might be just a VM or a single entity on which a logical block that applications can run on, okay? Which LPARs or partitions are affected, what the impact of not upgrading are, right? Figuring out which are at risk, and we can even automate the upgrade of these, or the application of these APARs to those LPARs, okay? Now, that might sound like a simple thing, but I was actually shocked to find out there's no tool that does this. And in fact, when we think broader to other ecosystems like Power, like Linux, right? This is still a very, very cumbersome process. And by the way, we are also going to be bringing this to Power, hopefully in the July timeframe, okay? So we started with mainframe, and Concert's, again, able to tell you which APARs need to be applied to which LPARs, and we can generate workflows to automatically open tickets or even initiate the upgrade, okay? Very simple use case, but very, very powerful. Again, more teams today, the mainframe skills are asked to do more with less, right? So this is something that's going to save an enormous amount of time to a very, very cumbersome process, okay? All right.
Hey, Joshua, a quick question. Like, all these use cases are really exciting, right? I think one of the clients had a question, especially when we are dealing with production environments, usually there is a change management process. And you mentioned that, right? In your workflows, you can actually address that. You can always bring in a human in the loop, make sure they validate that before any things are applied to a production environment, whether it's a patch or it's an upgrade. So maybe you can also chime in on that, how while we provide the automation, we still provide the human in the loop. So.
Absolutely. And I'm going to kind of go through that in three things. So first, Concert's never going to take an action unless you approve. Okay, let me just get that off the bat, because of course you don't, I mean, I wouldn't want an AI to do certain actions, okay, unless I am approving or aware, right? So there's three kind of levels here. The first level is what we call our automation rules, okay? And this is where, you know, you can have Concert take actions without explicit approval. And that might be simple things like opening a ticket, okay? I don't think you need approval to open a ticket. That doesn't actually affect anything in production. So something simple like opening a ticket can automatically be done so that as Concert detects issues, it opens a ticket, either in a change management system like ServiceNow. It can alert you in Slack, okay? That's all there today, okay? Now, when Concert generates a workflow, Concert's first couple of things. Concert's going to always make a recommendation, but Concert will only generate a workflow when you ask it to. Okay, so Concert will tell you that, hey, look, I have this remediation. You have to click it for it to generate that workflow. Okay, so that's one of the kind of layers we have just to control you know, whether this thing, so that it doesn't take action by itself. Okay, the last layer is in the workflow itself. Okay, a typical workflow. Why I keep using the word workflow versus just an automation is in the workflow itself, you can define very key approval processes. So for example, a full end-to-end workflow might be something like, okay, open a ticket into ServiceNow, make sure it includes the issue as well as the recommended action that you want to take and the workflow you want to execute. Get approval in ServiceNow, okay, so we can collect that approval. Alert a user in Slack, okay, saying that, okay, you know, this is the action I want to take, get a yes, okay, and then go kick off that workflow, okay? So just as an example, or you can do that workflow manually as well. So there's a lot of customization you can do, and a lot of different ways you can get at it. But I agree with that that question, right? Concert's not going to take action unless you initiate it or unless you approve it. Okay.
Thank you, Joshua. I know we have a couple of minutes to wrap. There will be a poll, so please make sure you rank that poll. And I think Joshua did an excellent job of covering not only what is Concert, what we're doing with Concert, where we are going with Concert. Joshua, any closing comments for our clients, like how they can get started on a Concert journey, things like that? So.
Yeah, great question. So before I get to that, like where it's going to go, and I encourage everyone to go do our trial. You can go to our website and do a trial and sign up for more information. Okay, but I want to reiterate what I said at the beginning, and which was Concert was originally designed to be used inside IBM. We built this because we had challenges inside RDM, right? And this is just a case study, and you can read this online, right? Where using Concert, our SRE teams now have 90% faster vulnerability mitigation, 98% faster certificate management. Okay, so there's more stories like this online, but I do want to be very, very clear, right? IBM is client zero. We are using this today actively, okay, in production. So I encourage you guys to kind of look at these stories online. You can just go to ibm.com. I think it's /cons. Do I have a link? No, I don't have a link. But you can sign up for a free trial, okay? And the trials are free. You can request a demo, or you can reach out to get more information. But if this interested you, by the way, feel free to reach out to me directly as well. Okay, I can provide my email in the presentation later. But if this interested you and you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out. And again, you can try this for yourself on ibm.com. Right. Okay.
Yeah, and what Josh and I have seen is a lot of clients like large banks, large telcos, where there is a lot of complexity, where they have, or even small mid-sized organizations where they don't have SRE skills, or where they don't have skills around security, where they're looking at AI helping them scale. Concert is resonating, and we are having a lot of clients starting their Concert journeys with us. Go ahead, Josh.
No, thank you, Sean. Any last questions? I think we have 1 minute. Otherwise, I think we can close.
No, I think we have a few more minutes. So maybe let us know how typically clients start with Concert. Maybe what's the best way to start? Like we talked about the use cases. You can tell them typically where are the use cases clients start with us on the Concert journey. And
yeah, so I think that really depends, right? We have clients who are only doing things like patch management. We have clients who are using our AI to convert MOPs to full-fledged workflows, right? We have clients who are doing just vulnerability management. So I think it really depends on the maturity of the client. We even have clients who are fully embedding this into their AI ecosystem and using the data that we collect and insights that we collect in Concert to power responses using their AI, right? And then we kick off the workflows, right? So Concert's actually built with a ton of exposed APIs so that you can do a lot of different custom things. And we did that purposely because every client's on a different maturity path, right? Let's take vulnerability management, for example, right? I was actually shocked to hear this, but only a very small subset of clients I've met actually do anything beyond just regular vulnerability scans, right? 90% of clients I meet will do the scan in development. They will literally manually go through each vulnerability every single week, and that's their process, right? And things cumbersome like that are what Concert's really there to improve. In fact, that was a process at IBM. If you guys don't know this, we do a vulnerability scan with every release. There's continuous scans that happen by the SRE team in production, but no product solves every single vulnerability. That's just physically impossible, right? What we usually go after are what we call the critical vulnerabilities, right? Those have to be resolved before we GA any product or push it into production, right? But figuring out what those are, understanding if they're actually critical or if they're actually not critical, that's a very, very cumbersome process. And I was shocked to hear when I first kind of took this on that no one the vast majority of enterprises still do this very, very manually. Resilience. I think I've met 1 or 2 clients out of the hundreds that I've talked to with resilience that are actually trying to do resilience. Nobody does this today, right? So our hope with Concert is really that automation, those outcomes that we want, is really the time savings and the cost savings, because the reality is with the heavy use of AI in the DevOps side, the creation of applications is becoming quicker. But I actually see a very big gap on the kind of, when I say the ITSM, the observability side in the adoption of AI. And I think the observability side struggling to keep up, right? So these teams are being tasked with more and more applications to manage. Need a tool like Concert now to help automate that as much as possible.
Yeah. Recently, I was talking to one of the large GSIs that offers SRE services, and they looked at Concert and they said, this could be our virtual SRE. And I like that whole concept because they don't have enough SREs in organizations, and Concert can supplement your SRE organization as a virtual SRE. So there's a lot of power within Concert. We hope you'll take Joshua and myself on our offer to come in and help you get started on this Concert journey. Again, please give us feedback on this session. Thank you, Joshua. This was a great session. We'll make sure to get you our contact information and these slides after this session. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in the next session.